Welcome to Active Defense. I'm Eric. This channel is dedicated to showing the world that all use of guns by regular citizens isn't crime-based, but typically used lawfully for active defense. This is video number 2 in my July series, so Independence Day focused. We're focusing on the first battles by militiamen, regular military-aged citizens, not professional military forces. This was how the founders viewed the militia. Please subscribe to the channel and hit that notification bell to your right. And please become a patron of the channel by the Patreon link in the description. Also, please share your own thoughts on active defense, as well as how our founders provided for our national defense. Let's get into it. Okay, welcome back to our series of our Independence Day series, just dealing with various battles where patriots, regular citizens, picked up arms to fight for the rights of liberty. Trying to fight against the tyranny of Britain to assert their own independence. This first one is the Battle of Chelsea Creek. The Battle of Chelsea Creek was the second military engagement of the Boston campaign of the American Revolutionary War. It's also known as Battle of Noddle's Island, interesting name. Battle of Hog Head and Battle of Hog Island and Battle of the Chelsea Estuary. This battle was fought on May 27th and 28th in 1775 on Chelsea Creek and on salt marshes, mud flats, and islands of Boston Harbor, northeast of Boston Peninsula. Most of these areas have since been united with the mainland by a land reclamation and now part of East Boston, Chelsea, Winthrop, and Revere. Now it's interesting that would have been very swampy, so that would have been even more difficult of a fight, so good on them. The American colonists met their goal of strengthening the siege of Boston by removing livestock and hay on the islands from each of the British regulars. The British armed schooner Diana was also destroyed and its weaponry was appropriated by the colonial side. Now remember, this is all just citizen soldiers, so again they took and utilized military grade weaponry for the defense of their homes and their families. This is the first naval capture of the war, and it was a significant boost to the morale of the colonial forces. Battle of Machias. If any of you can tell me in the comments as to how that's best pronounced, let me know. The Battle of Machias, June 11th through 12th, 1775, was an early naval engagement of the American Revolutionary War. It is also known as the Battle of Margarita, and fought around the port of Machias, Maine. Following the outbreak of war, British authorities enlisted loyalist merchant Ichabod Jones to supply the troops who were under the siege of Boston. 2 of his merchant ships arrived in Machias on June 2nd, 1775, accompanied by the British armed sloop HMS Margarita, sometimes also spelled Margarita or Marguerite, commanded by midshipman James Moore. The townspeople of Machias disapproved of Jones' intentions and arrested him. So they asserted themselves and arrested whom they considered to be basically a traitor, which is interesting during a time of war. They also tried to arrest Moore, but he escaped through the harbor. The townspeople seized one of Jones' ships, armed it along the side of a second one, and sailed out to meet Moore. After a short confrontation, Moore was fatally wounded and his vessel and crew were captured. The people of Machias captured additional British ships and fought off a large force that tried to take control of the town in the Battle of Machias in 1777. Privateers, which are basically state-sanctioned pirates, and others operating out of Machias continued to harass the Royal Navy throughout the war. Again, none of this was a formally trained force. These were all volunteers, regular citizens. Battle of Bunker Hill. This is a very well-known battle, so it's very interesting to consider. Please make sure you pay attention to this one. The Battle of Bunker Hill was fought on Saturday, June 17th, 1775, during the Siege of Boston in the first stage of the American Revolutionary War. The battle is named after Bunker Hill in Charlestown, Massachusetts, which is peripherally involved in the battle. It was the original objective of both the colonial and British troops, though the majority of combat took place on the adjacent hill, which later became known as Breed's Hill. On June 13, 1775, the leaders of the colonial forces besieging Boston learned that the British were planning to send troops out from the city to fortify the unoccupied hills surrounding the city, which would have given them control of Boston Harbor. In response, 1,200 colonial troops under the command of William Prescott stealthily occupied Bunker Hill and Breed's Hill. During the night, the colonists constructed a strong redoubt, basically a small fortress, on Breed's Hill, as well as smaller fortified lines across the Charlestown Peninsula. By daybreak of June 17th, the British became aware of the presence of colonial forces on the peninsula and mounted an attack against them that day. 2 assaults on the colonial positions were repulsed with significant British casualties. The third and final attack carried the redoubt after the defenders ran out of ammunition. The colonists retreated over Bunker Hill, leaving British in control of the peninsula. The battle was a tactical, though somewhat Pyrrhic victory for the British. It proved to be a sobering experience for them. Now, the word Pyrrhic basically means a very costly victory. They may have won, but it was so costly to them that it was kind of pointless. The British incurred many more casualties than the Americans had sustained, including many officers. The battle had demonstrated that inexperienced militia were able to stand up to regular army troops in battle. Subsequently, the battle discouraged the British from further frontal attacks against well-defended front lines. The American casualties were comparatively much fewer, although their losses included General Joseph Warren and Major Andrew McClary, the final casualty of the battle. The battle led the British to adopt a more cautious planning and maneuver execution in future engagements, which was evident in the subsequent New York and New Jersey campaign, which arguably helped rather than hindered the American forces, as their new approach to battle was actually giving the Americans greater opportunity to retreat if defeat was imminent. The costly engagement also convinced the British of the need to hire substantial numbers of Hessian auxiliaries, which basically for them it's just a bunch of mercs. It'd be like nowadays us for hiring a bunch of Blackwater or whatever kind of mercenary group to bolster their strength in the face of new and formidable Continental Army. Now, the Continental Army did not exist before this point. This was all volunteer force comprised entirely of local citizens who the new governments of the United States, of the Continental Congress, had to hire on to train them in much more formal forms of battle. But these were all just citizen soldiers, citizens who took up their own arms to fight for what they needed to, which is why the Second Amendment so desperately affirms the need that the right to own arms shall not be infringed. It is the continuous contention of the need for an individual to be able to provide for their own defense, as well as for the defense of their neighbor. Okay, next battle. Battle of Gloucester. I hope I'm saying that correctly. The Battle of Gloucester was a skirmish fought early in the American Revolutionary War at Gloucester, Massachusetts on August 8th or 9th, 1775. Royal Navy Captain John Lindsay commanded the sloop of war HMS Falcon. A sloop is a kind of a ship at the time. Spotted 2 schooners, again another kind of ship, that were returning from the West Indies. After capturing one schooner, Lindsay chased the second one into Gloucester harbor, where it was grounded. The townspeople called out their militia, again, regular citizens, so basically they just called them militia, and the men who had their weaponry came up to, repulse, captured British seamen sent to seize the grounded schooner, and recovered the captured ship as well. The skirmish was one of a series of actions that prompted a retaliatory expedition by Royal Navy Captain Henry Mowat, hope I'm saying that correctly, in October 1775. The major event of his cruise, the burning of Falmouth, was cited by the Second Continental Congress when it established the Continental Navy. Okay. Final battle. Hearts of Oak, New York militia. The Hearts of Oak, originally the Corsicans, were a volunteer militia based in the British colonial province of New York. Formed circa 1775 in New York City, the original name was evidently adopted in emulation of the enlightened Corsican Republic headed by Pascal Paoli, which had been expressed 6 years before, and which got considerable sympathy in Britain and its colonies. Militia members included students at King's College, now Columbia University, such as Nicholas Fish, Robert Troup, and most famously Alexander Hamilton. The company drilled in the graveyard of nearby St. Paul's Chapel before classes in uniforms they designed themselves, consisting of short green tight-fitting jackets, round leather hats with a cockade. I don't know what that is. You're going to have to look it up. Try to do this, I guess, if that helps. And the phrase "Liberty or Death" on the band, and a badge of red and the tin hearts on their jackets with the words "God and our right." A reaffirmation that God is very much at the center of society at the time. It wasn't just a bunch of deists like a lot of people try to say. Translated into English, motto Deo et mon droit. Translated into English, adapted to make its possessive pronoun plural. In August 1775, the Hearts of Oak participated in a successful raid, which, while under fire from HMS Asia to seize cannon from the battery, thereby becoming an artillery unit thereafter. In 1776, Hamilton was given a commission as a captain by the Revolutionary New York Provincial Congress, with instructions to raise the New York Provincial Company of Artillery, today's regular Army 1st Battalion, 5th Field Artillery, and the mission to protect Manhattan Island. The Hearts of Oak formed its corps. In 2015, a supporters group, for a Major League Soccer team, New York City FC, took up the name Hearts of Oak in tribute to Alexander Hamilton and its defenders of New York City. That's an interesting bit of trivia there. Okay, that is the final battle, and it just goes to show you throughout all these battles that it was never a formal military force, never a formal fighting force. It required regular citizens that were armed, that could step up to provide defense. Now, some people could say that that isn't needed now, but no one can know what the future can hold, and it's always better to have the ability to provide for your own defense than not have it and try to rely on others. Okay, thank you for watching, and if you're willing, please consider donating at the Patreon link below so that I can continue to improve the quality of the videos, as well as to increase their exposure so the YouTube algorithm puts them in front of more eyes. Have a great night.